News 46. Local coverage you can count on.
He's going to be a little bit late, like right there. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'd start with a moment of silence to be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Waters, if you would, please.
For a moment of silence this evening, I'd like to remember our soldiers that were lost in Afghanistan over the weekend, them and their families. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item number 2, discussion possible decision regarding moving the order of or deletion of an agenda item.
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes, I've had a request to move the consent agenda up to item 2.5. We've got a couple of dynamite candidates up for approval for the Tourism Board, and they're both here in attendance.
Any objection to moving consent agenda items to 2.5? All the
Is
consent?
that all agenda items or just 20D or 12D?
Do them all.
I have no objection.
Okay, we'll make the consent agenda items 2.5. Anything else? Mr. Culkin?
No.
Ms. Andersby?
No, sir.
Dr. Waters? Okay.
I'd like to move that we approve consent agenda items A through D.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve all the consent agenda items. Is there any discussion from the board?
Yes, I'd like to welcome Jack Sanders and Christine Grevich to the Tourism Board. Could you just kind of stand up and wave? Thank you very much.
All right. I guess with that, we'll take a vote on the consent agenda items. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda items, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item number 3 is the announcements. Ms. Carolyn. Excuse me, Ms. Industry.
Miss Carolyn's fine. I feel like I'm in the South with Miss Carolyn. Announcements for August 9th. The Arena Advisory Board will meet on August 11th at 7 p.m. in the Town Annex. Pahrump Boundary Line Advisory Board will meet on August 11th at 6:30 p.m. in the Town Office Conference Room. The Community Center Task Force will meet on August 12th at 7 p.m. in the Town Annex. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board will meet on August 17th at 6:30 p.m. in the Town Annex. The Veterans Memorial Advisory Board will meet on August 18th at 6 p.m. in the Town Annex. The Incorporation Advisory Board will meet on August 24th at 6 p.m. in the Town Annex. The Pahrump Tourism and Convention Council will meet on September 1st at 8 a.m. in the Town Annex. The Nuclear Waste and Environmental Advisory Board will meet on September 2nd at 2 p.m. in the Town Annex. Public Lands Advisory Board will meet on September 7th at 7 p.m. in the Town Annex. And we'll have I believe, the last movie night in the park on Saturday night, August 20th. I'd like to ask, is that correct? Because we have the United Way Luau fundraiser also on August 20th. So It is correct. They'll both be at Ian Deutsch Park? The luau's canceled?
No, it's in a different place at the park.
Oh, they're both at the park. It's the,
There are no scheduling conflicts between the two.
okay,
We were afraid there might be, but they've worked
it
together
out.
and there won't be any issues.
great.
There's been a point of order called. Come down to the microphone, please. Come down to the microphone, please. Now you need to turn it on. Push the button to turn it on. A little bit lower.
Okay, I'm not used to high tech. That Pahrump Nuclear Waste will meet on September 9th, because September 2nd is the Labor Day holiday.
All right, thank you. Correction, September 9th at 2 p.m. in the Town Annex. And the Pahrump Movie Night in the Park will continue on August 20th. And that is the last movie night, correct?
I don't.
Yes.
I thought it was supposed to go all the way through August.
2 more Saturdays for movie in the park. So this week's movie is scheduled to be the movie Tangled, and next week is scheduled as Cars. The Nye County Sheriff's Office is sponsoring the Great Summer Program at Ian Deutsch Memorial Park this week. The Breast Cancer Support Group will meet August 19th from 11 to 12:30 p.m. at the Nathan Adelson Hospice. The United Way-sponsored Luau fundraiser will be on August 20th at Ian Deutsch Memorial Park from 6 to 10 p.m. Us Too Prostate Cancer Support Group will meet on August 25th in the hospital training room from 6 p.m. Symphony Animal Foundation will be holding Pasta for Paws on August 27th at 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the VFW. Donations are asked for the foundation and animals. The Pahrump Valley Rough Riders will be holding an event on August 20th from 9 a.m. at the arena. The Social Security Administration will be in the Town Annex on August 30th at 9 a.m. And it's not listed, but Saturday, August 20th at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., the Youth Advisory Board will be having their last post-workshop training in the Town Annex.
Thank you, very good. Any other announcements from the board? Ms. Parker? Mr. Kaufman? Dr. Waters?
Yes. I've heard, many people have talked to me about how divided our board is and how a lot of our votes are 3-2. So I did some counting back from January when we were first seated as a board, and I want you to know that we've taken 125 votes since January through the end of July. 88 votes were 5-0, that's 70%. 25 votes were 4-1, 20%. 12 votes were 3-2, 10%. Just so you know how we vote. And different votes at different times. 4-1 could be any one of us. 3-2 have not been the same 3-2. It's just the fact that the way we research it, the way we look at it, that's the way we wanted it, and that's in our hearts. That's the way we vote. We also get guidance from the community when you contact us by email or verbally, telephone, and let us know how you feel about things. And we try to vote for the community. But again, 88 votes or 70% were 5-0. That's where we're all united. And that's what I consider this board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waters.
Anything from staff? All right. Any public announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment.
Butch Harper resident. Smiles Across Pahrump a couple of weekends ago came off fairly well as far as I'm concerned, because I saw a lot of smiles. 21 children got a brand new bike. They got brand new Razor scooters. The Razor electric motorcycle that was donated was from DCI Motorsports. Scooter Man donated it. And proceeds from that auction will be divided between Maple Star, Food for Thought, and the summer camp for the children. And this can't be done, I got a lot of credit for it, but it can't be done without with the 30 names, more than 30 names on that T-shirt. And I'll get beat up again, but 5 of those sponsors are right up there in front of us. And many others, some that didn't even want to be noticed. So I got some T-shirts I got to get made up because some names were left off it, and I apologize. But it can't be done, not by one man, I told you that before, or a group. It takes a town. And that town came together, and they produced a lot of gifts for those young children. And that's what it was all about. And I got criticized because it wasn't commercialized. Not enough vendors. This isn't about the vendors. This is a plain old block party we used to have in Chicago. We block off one end of the block, the other end. Everybody on the block, the only difference is you left it in the house. And you just brought out your chairs, your tables, your barbecue pit out in the middle of the street and had a good time. That's what it's about. It's about our children, and it gives the community a chance to get together and enjoy each other's company. And, you know, I can't say enough about this community. When people say this community don't come together, well, I just got to say you're fooling yourself, because I see it the last 2 years. And if the Lord allows me to be here next year, it'll be put on again. And like I say, not one or two people or a group, it takes community. And this community came together, the medical community, our business community, our fire department, the sheriff's department, town board, many individuals, and I just want to thank Scott Lewis for having his men out there, keeping us all cool. And I just want to say to Vicki Parker, don't walk into that water backwards. Walk frontward with that T-shirt of yours. Okay. But we didn't have that contest anyway, but a lot of people got cooled off. And the main purpose was to put a smile on a child's face, and that's what this community did. So I just got to give the community the credit, because it can't come off without everybody's support. So I just want to say thank you, God bless you, and bring our troops home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name's Louis DeCanio, and I've been a Pahrump resident for more than 8 years. This building we are in tonight is the Commissioner's Building, and this definitely signifies Nye County. The Bob Roode Community Center is 100% Pahrump, and the legacy and historical value can never be measured in money. Approximately 8 months ago, the roof on the Bob Roode Community Center was leaking due to heavy rainfall. Roof leaks are very common, and if it happened in our homes, the problem would have been fixed immediately. Wayne Carlson of Pool Pack, which is based in Reno, Nevada, handles all of our town's insurance. And our insurance agent is also based in Reno, Nevada. I guess not staying local seems to be a big part of the problem. There are many unanswered questions which the people need to know. When was the insurance company first notified of the roof damage? Has an insurance adjuster been in the community center? Also, is the insurance company going to reimburse the town for lack of use? Recently, a company which is also based in Reno, Nevada, was paid $25,000 to examine a Bob Roode Community Center to check for mold and other toxic things. And from what I have read, there is nothing seriously wrong with the community center, but I'd like to know why the town of Pahrump paid the $25,000 and not the insurance company. We also have a right to know the name of the toxology expert who put black plastic over all the windows at the community center and locked up everything as tight as a clamshell. It seems like that person was trying to create a toxic environment rather than solving the problem. Many people who are either employed by the town of Pahrump or have been elected by the people of Pahrump to make important decisions have all neglected their duty by failing to address this issue in a timely manner. Recently, a community center task force of all volunteers has been formed to assess the damage and to make recommendations on what to do at the community center. This is totally unnecessary and just another layer of bureaucracy which will further stall any repairs or renovations to the community center. Anytime a board or task force is formed, then bylaws, open meeting laws, and agenda items must be adhered to. What we need is individual volunteers with roofing and other building and construction backgrounds to assess the damage to the roof and any other problems that need to be cleaned, repaired, or replaced without forming any bureaucratic task force. From that point, we get bids from local companies to do the work. The damage assessment and local bids from contractors should then be given to the town board to be looked over and then voted on. If I was running this town, the insurance company would have been notified immediately, and I guarantee you the community center would have been open a long time ago. And the people from Reno, Nevada would no longer be making decisions for the town of Pahrump. And there's no doubt we have a problem which causes a big stink in our community. But I'm not talking about mold, I'm talking about our local politics.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Kenny and I'm a Boy Scout in Troop 235. Many of you may know that in scouting the highest rank attainable is Eagle Scout. In order to obtain that rank, you need to plan and complete an Eagle project. I would like to do an Eagle project that benefits the community in which I live. I am here tonight to ask for suggestions. If anyone has a project that would benefit the town or community of Pahrump, I would like to hear them. The time frame for me to complete my Eagle project would be by the end of the year. I would like to advance to the rank of Eagle Scout shortly after my 13th birthday. Again, my name is Kenny Yun, and my phone number is 727-9193 for any suggestions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Frank Merzio, Pahrump. I'd like to address the board tonight concerning the Run Center. About 8 months ago, Mr. Kohlbarger closed the building and barred anyone from entering, including the town's own public works. Recently, a task force toured the building, and I sent out an email to that effect. And I got one back from Mrs. Parker denying that that was even going to be a tour. Now I have some questions. Why did Mr. Kohlbarger close the building after Belfort Property Restorations completed the work at the center? Why has Mr. Kohlbarger repeatedly denied there's an invoice for services about $4,000 to $5,000? Has it been determined that a health hazard exists in the Run Center, and who made that determination? Where are the reports on the public risk that resulted in Mr. Kohlbarger closing the building? Why was no notice published for the task force tour? No, that's not, forget that one. Why did Mrs. Parker deny that there was even going to be a tour to take place? Is there an agreement between Mrs. Parker and Mr. Kohlbarger whereby her support his employment if he supports her new community center? As stakeholders, we have a right to ask questions, like us or not. We have a right to expect honest and timely answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Dave Stevens, one of them Pahrump back dog guys. I went over to that task force, the last meeting they had there. It's all right, I had a little humbug there, but that don't mean nothing. But I can't figure out why they haven't fixed that up before. If it was up in Washington, it had been fixed up in a couple of weeks. We got the best carpenters, we got the best everything up in Washington. They got in this town, they make a high school project out of just everything they do here. Yeah, it really is. And they even refused to let me in there. So I'm a citizen. I'm the public, and that's a public building. I'd like to know why I couldn't go in there. I asked Sam out there, he said, oh, there's some kind of law or something. I can't see any law unless somebody's to back it up. Then why they haven't done anything, I think they were all planning on having a brand new building. That's my opinion. I don't know what they got. But that thing should be fixed up if it can be. They won't let me in there to take a look at it. I have a general contractor's license, if you want to know. It isn't valid now, it's about 40 years ago, but the meeting was a good meeting, but Even my old friend Honey Cocken maybe could have run a better meeting than that last one. My ex-friend. Vicky, she's trying to get in there, and she couldn't do nothing. I don't think she's ever drove a nail before. Maybe she has. Okay,
Mr.
then I
Stevens.
take it back, Vicky. No, that's going too far there. If they can fix it up, fine. If they can't, go ahead and build a new building. I'm all for building a new building, but they can't afford it now. They haven't got any money. They don't have a dime in this town. I can't get anybody to say anything here, so I'll have to quit now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Will Bond. I'm a resident of Pahrump. I'm also the vice president of the Nye Gold Seekers. And the purpose of appearing with the public comment is, as most of you know, out by the Johnny Mine, there's a lot of historical buildings. We have in our Nye Gold Seekers Club probably 500 local and people from Las Vegas that participate. We had a building out there, and we used that. We hung a sign on it and described it as the Nye Gold Seekers Clubhouse. Well, Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, the building was in great shape. We had some prospectors out there that were finding some nuggets, and they left at 2 o'clock because of the heat and looked everything over, and it was all fine. The first ones that went out Monday morning noticed that someone had either backed into the building or thrown a chain around it and pulled it down, but the building it's totally flattened to the ground. The building I'm talking about is the old historical building that the miners out there years and years ago, probably 60, 70, 80 years ago, they used that as a storage place for their dynamite. Well, that building is flattened. We're going to try and rebuild it because the pieces are all still there, and we will put it back up again. We had a 500-gallon water tank out there that we provided water for the prospectors. The water tank, they've tied a chain around that and pulled it down almost to Highway 160, just drug it down the road behind the pickup or whatever. The Sheriff's Department is cooperating with us. We picked up some evidence out there that we hope has fingerprints on it. And the good part of it is the deputy, excuse me, that took the report has found a clause in Nevada law that when you damage a product that belongs to a Nevada citizen over the age of 70, that's an automatic felony. So that's some pretty serious stuff that whoever did that, and we're in hopes that there'll be a match in the fingerprints, but if not, we're going to look at other ways of possibly getting information leading to the arrest and conviction. And the name on the claim out there is Janice Agers, and Janice is over 70 years old. So I just wanted to bring that information to the board and the public because there is a lot of Pahrumpians that are part of the Nye Gold Seekers. Thank you.
I appreciate the information. I'm so sorry to hear about the building. Is there any further public comment? We'll move on to the advisory board reports. Ms. Parker?
Yes, the tourism board met, and they had a presentation by Mr. Bob Adams of the Public Lands, Chair of Public Lands, and it was such a great presentation that we're going to bring it back to the next town board meeting so all of you can see what we've actually got surrounding Pahrump.
We'll look forward to seeing that. Mr. Culkin.
Yes, the Community Center Task Force had an opportunity, so as to not break the open meeting law, I think it was two or three people at a time went in and to look at the damage and everything. And Mr. Kohlbarger, we still have some openings on that task force, don't we? I think at least one or something.
Go ahead, recruit.
So what I'm getting at is I noticed that 3 people got up here, and they seem to be the same people, and they get up and they ask a lot of questions about the Root Center, and they make a lot of comments, but not a single one of those people put in to be on the task force, so they would have been able to, we have 2 openings, or they could have went into the thing and got firsthand knowledge of what's going on there, and could have asked all the questions and can ask questions and get, which you can still ask questions anyway. No one's asked me about the task force. I just don't understand that. If you really are concerned about the Root Center, then how come you didn't put in to be on the task force? So I would invite you to do so. Mr. Kohlbarger just informed us we have 2 openings still. So I hope I see your names there.
For alternates.
And I'd also like to say that the task force that is put together so far is a very diverse group of people with a lot of good backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, and you'll see something happen. And as I keep saying, this is a government thing that we're working on. It's not in your backyard, and we all know how bureaucracy works. But there's no secrets here, there's no conspiracy, and if you just come up and ask to the town office your questions, they'll be answered. So why you come here and ask when we can't answer them? I don't know if that's just some kind of semantics or what, but if you really want answers, go to the town office. I'm sure Mr. Kohlbarger would be more than happy to furnish you with answers. And I would hope that you'll put in to be on the task force. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Endersby?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to remind the advisory boards and the liaisons that at the last town board, we approved asking the advisory boards to bring up this question on their agenda. And Mr. Culkin asked if we could do it instead of in 3 months for the advisory boards to provide answers in 2 months. The question is if the town of Pahrump were to consider the development of an event center, community center, and or fairgrounds, where would such a center be best located? What are the pros and cons of the recommended location, and any suggestions for the utilization of such a development? And the purpose for asking the advisory boards to bring that up on their agenda is so that in their field of expertise, whatever the advisory board's field of expertise is, they can address that question and bring back recommendations in their field of expertise. And it also allows citizens to come and attend an advisory board where deliberation can be more extensive than a three-minute comment period. So it really is beneficial to the community, and it's beneficial to the town board and the final outcome of any decisions in the future as far as where a community center or fairgrounds or event center might be. So it becomes really a public process, which is what it would foster if you were to come to a advisory board. So I ask the advisory boards and the liaisons to please make sure within the September meetings that they address that, because with the timeline that was set, it was 2 months. That really means that report needs to come back at the October 11th town board meeting. And the last thing I have, Mr. Chairman, is that the Youth Advisory Board will be holding their post-workshop session, and that's for the purpose of the training of our youth in the process. They did take some of the summer off for their summer activities, but come September they'll be back and we'll be announcing what their regular schedule is. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Waters?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Both advisory boards will have something at the next meeting, but nothing.
I appreciate that. One of the things that I've noticed about recently regarding the town's website and the calendar and the advisory boards is I really would appreciate it if all the advisory boards would check the calendar, the website, the information. There's several different places where you go to investigate the different advisory boards. The time stated there may be different than what's stated on the calendar, and it may be have a different location. So I'd like everybody to make sure their information is up to date. Is there any liaisons in the audience? Seeing
Mr. Chairman? Yeah.
You can make the report early.
It's better to get it direct.
Come on down.
Tell us about the tourism involvement and everything. You had a good meeting last time.
Robert Adams, chairperson of the Public Land Advisory Board, that we're working on identifying ATV recreation possibilities surrounding Pahrump, and we've entered a cooperative relationship with Tourism and Convention Council in promoting those recreational opportunities. That presentation, as you said, will be at the next town board meeting. And also there'll be a presentation at the League of Women Voters. I don't know if that's an open event or not, but it'd probably be best to contact them on that. We've got one opening for a permanent member on the Public Land Advisory Board, and we have 2 alternative openings for anyone that would want to come and attend our meetings and see what we do, and if they want to put an application in, if they're interested at that point, please do so, that we've got openings.
Thank you very much. Any other advisory board reports? All right, we'll move on to discussion on the Town of Pahrump Economic Development Report.
Evening, Town Board. Mr. Darby, if I may.
Please.
Contour Entertainment was in town today. Chris Brown, the CEO of Contour, John Turner, Pro Forma Advisors, LLC, and Don Holbrook. They toured the community, and they held a 3.5-hour meeting at the town offices today with the business community and the PTCC. It went extremely well. Chris Brown took just a little bit over 6 pages of notes, and John Turner took just a little bit over 4 pages of notes. They were very impressed with the business community and what they had to say. They very much liked what the PTCCs had to say. They were very excited that they were very straightforward with their answers and questions. They were at times challenging them, and again, I had a chance to take them out and around a little bit afterwards. They were very impressed with today's meeting. They were very impressed with the PTCC members, and the business community showed up. Afterwards, we went out and visited both wineries and met with Jack Sanders, who showed us around his winery. Very nice winery. If you've never been there, please get out there. It's a very nice winery. A lot of space to hold meetings. Maybe we should hold a town board meeting out there. No, you can't drink.
But everybody else can, right?
That's up to Jack. No, but actually,
why am I being punished?
It's a very nice facility out there. He's done a lot of good out there. I'll answer any questions.
Yes, it is a nice winery. I've been there a couple times for different occasions. Any questions from the board? Ms. Parker? Mr. Culkin? Ms. Ennisby?
Yes, Mr. Kobarger, can you just let all of us know what the status of wind sail receptor is, if they're finishing their escrow and when they're going to be moving in?
Well, there's been a little kink on that. They had an issue with the individual they were trying to buy the property from, the building. And right now the deal is off. They are looking for another place, but they are also being actively recruited by another community in Nevada. So as soon as we hear more, we will let you know. The owner is out of the country at this time.
Also, there's been previous discussion on the fairgrounds and some development out there. Is that moving forward?
At this time, we're just talking to the individuals about that. Not going to be moving forward at any time soon.
It was helpful to have Mr. Balakwe to give a verbal report. I appreciate the kind of form that it doesn't mean much to me. So if it could go back to its written format, I think that was a little more explanatory, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. When we first did that format, we asked the town board what they thought, and everybody pretty much liked it, so that's why we stayed with it.
Dr. Waters?
Yes, I had some of the same questions. I like the report, but the fact that Mr. Balakwe was here to answer questions, because what I was going to ask for is an overview of everything that's going on. We can look at all this, but are things going in a positive way? Are they at a standstill? Are they going in a negative way? This we can't tell by looking at the report. It shows that things were done, but can we receive an overview? Can you give us an overview tonight of which way things are going?
Well, right now, we have several businesses, new businesses, that are looking at the town. The interesting thing about that is the county has passed on 2 businesses to the town to actively recruit, and the town is actively recruiting those 2 businesses. The wind sale has reached a snag, and we are trying to rectify that. Basically, she was talking about, Mrs. Indersby was talking about the fairgrounds. That's not reached a snag, it just hasn't gone to the point where they're going to be moving forth, or they haven't decided yet. So overall, more and more businesses are looking, and the town and the county are such a strong relationship right now that we're sharing information, which is a positive.
Okay. Again, if it's possible, like Ms. Indersby said, if maybe we can get a paragraph or a summary of what we're looking at, I think it would help.
I would like to also add, Mr. Chairman, if I could, we did have several ribbon cuttings, and that's very appreciative that our chamber is working hard at bringing in business as well as business licensing and economic development. So we are having businesses open, and one I know was a pizza place, and another was the change of management for the ice cream place there on 372. Can't remember. Seymour's, yes, love their ice cream. So very glad that we're having expansion in the business community. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to say something.
Mr. Conklin.
I attended part of the Contours meeting today, and one of the things that really stood out for me is when a builder from Mountain Falls made a statement. And he said that when he gets somebody coming from San Diego, Southern California or something to buy a house or have a house built, they try real hard to keep them out of Pahrump, because they've had many people coming straight to them, sign a contract, and then go into Pahrump and come back and tear it up. And it isn't something we want to hear, but it's something we need to hear. We have a problem. One of the things that was mentioned was go to Albertsons as an example. We have a lot of homeless people hanging around there and stuff. I personally have escorted a lady out with a friend of mine because she was afraid to go to her car by herself. We have some problems here, and what we need to realize is they're not going to go away just because we want them to go away. We have to change our financial environment in our community to make these things go away. Doing the same thing is not going to change anything. One of the things that came out at today's meeting, I heard people talking about, they seem kind of reluctant to think out of the box and do something a little different, and they wanted to take things a little slow and make things a little bit better. But I pointed out something to them, because I drove away and I came back, and it may not seem like a big thing to you, but it did to me. You know, you take Front Sight, you take the racetrack, those aren't things that appeal to the masses of people. Pahrump doesn't have something that appeals to the masses of people, and that's what we have to work on. We have some really great spokes, but we really don't have the hub to put those spokes together. And this town is going to die if we don't think outside of the box and start getting on board and working together for something magnificent to happen. And those are the facts. And you know, when we want to look the other way and we don't want to deal with the facts, and nothing's going to happen. You know, it's time to recognize what we got. We have people in this community that volunteered for our advisory boards, and they work really hard. And we need more help. We need more people to get involved. We see tonight, as I pointed out earlier, that people get up and they complain about things, but they're reluctant to get involved. Well, if no one gets involved, then nothing's going to happen. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question of Mr. Kohlbarger? At the Tourism Convention Council, it was clearly stated that the board members were not to attend, were requested not to attend that meeting. So I'm wondering, I appreciate Mr. Culkin's interest, of course, but I think in the future, if a board member goes and attends, that it's noted that all board members should attend. It would be appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Item number 7, discussion possible decision on creating the 2011-2012 Town Board Goals and Performance Objective.
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes, I counted these, and there's actually a round number of 50 of them. We were very generous. In fact, one member actually included 29 of them. There are many of them that have been completed. There are some that are duplicates, and there are some definitely that the board should vote on one at a time. And so how I suggest that we handle this is how we've done in the past with things like rewriting ordinances, where Mr. Kohlbarger reads something and then asks each of us, and if we agree, he can put it on the list, and he can bring back the list at the next meeting that we can vote for in entirety. But that would be my suggestion, to go through these before tomorrow morning.
Okay, I actually have to agree with you on that, because in the past, being on the board in the past, it felt like we weren't actually voting on or had any discussion on anybody else's ideas or thoughts. It was just, we just vote to pass the entire package.
That is correct, and I would like to see them gone through one at a time, and he's done so well in the past keeping us on track that that's my recommendation as to how we handle it.
Is there any objection from the board? Mr. Culkin?
Well, I was just thinking that if you got too many objectives here,
Well, we got to do them one at a time.
I guess we can do that. I was kind of thinking about maybe now that we see what everybody else has put in, and there are also some former board member comments in here, maybe each person can limit it to 4 or 5, and then we could whittle those down or discuss them. Because obviously we have too big of a list. Things get diluted and then things don't get done. It's just too overwhelming. I experienced that in my own life. I take on too many projects and I can't seem to get nothing done.
That's why we need to go through them one at a time, because there are a lot of duplicates, and there are a lot of things that have been completed.
Well, I was thinking instead of tying up board time, that maybe if we were to table this till next week, and we could all go through it and get our requests in for the next meeting and whittle that down, so we do that on our own time, so to speak, instead of tying up public time. Maybe that, that would help whittle it down to get to where you're talking about.
I don't think so.
But I don't know.
Ms. Endersby?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to address the difference between goals and objectives. What we have really is a list of goals. The list I put together was a review of the goals established by the town boards starting back in July of '08 and going through. The ones that I listed, from what I could see, most of them have not been completed. If some of them have, then that just shortens the list. But these are goals. They don't have objectives attached to them. So what we've started is the process, Mr. Chairman, of establishing goals. And if we are to do the objectives with timelines, that is another step that we will have to perform. Some of the goals, Mrs. Parker is right, they have been maybe started but not completed. So with that, and the way that the contract and the town manager's contract and also the board policy reads, is that we're supposed to work with the town manager on establishing goals and objectives and the evaluation process. That is something that's not done quickly, and certainly 5 goals from each could be asked, but we need to have those objectives listed with the goals, and we need timelines attached to that. So there's really a need to further develop goals and objectives.
Dr. Waters?
Yes, after listening to what Ms. Parker said, and I like what she said, but at the same time, she said, and I didn't count them all up. I think she said there were about 50.
There are 50.
I think we should take all 50. And if we're going to talk about having Mr. Kohlbarger put them together, take all 50, and there's some that are duplicates, some are already completed, and he can state that as he lists the 50, and then we can look at the ones that are left over.
That was my idea.
Okay? There are some that are duplicates between them, and if he lists all of those, regardless of who they're from, and we can look at those separately, and then at the next meeting, we could come back and say, okay, these will be deleted, these will be accepted, and so on.
I think we should just go through them tonight. Otherwise, you're kicking the can down the road, and we haven't accomplished anything by coming back again. There are duplicates, but there are things here that have definitely been completed, and there are some that should be labeled long-term, because there is no way that they will be completed before we get around to reviewing them. For example, Last Chance Park is a long-term goal. That's not going to get done in the next 6 months, but he needs to be working on it.
And it still needs to be a goal.
Yes,
So
but it's a long-term goal. There are short-term goals, long-term goals.
And
We should be labeling them as we go along.
And we could always separate those later. If we're talking about bringing it back at the next town board meeting anyway, we're not kicking the can down the road. What we're doing is letting Mr. Kohlbarger take all 50 and put them in the right categories so that we can handle them without taking the time of the community to sit through as we go through 50 and debate back and forth.
Yes, I would agree with that. If we take 10 minutes for each one, just call that an average. We're talking about 500 minutes here.
Actually, Mr. Kohlbarger and I went through this in a half hour. Now, granted, some of these need some discussion, but it didn't take that long to go through the list.
Dr. Waters, when I read your list, it kind of helped define goals and objectives for me. The goal basically is what I'm trying to accomplish, and the objective is the reason why I'm trying to accomplish it.
That's correct.
And
Now, because we didn't have any format, and again, my background is Air Force, I use the Air Force format, and that's what we did in the Air Force for goals and objectives. We looked at our goals, just as we look at the goals for the town, and then we talk about what we need to do to get there. And that's what it's all about.
Well, objectives are actually the official business definition. Our goals are what you want to accomplish, and objectives are the means by which you accomplish them. And the reason that I did not put down any objectives on mine is that I felt that Mr. Kohlbarger was certainly capable of handling those goals without me micromanaging him. So that's why I only listed goals. Some things perhaps need objectives, but the items that I had are things that he's been working on all along. And I see no need to micromanage him.
well, some of them would be quite obvious what the objective is.
That's right.
So, you may not need to say,
But first you got to come up with goals before you can come up with objectives.
And that's why I said if we let Mr. Kohlbarger take the 50 goals, whether they have objectives with them or not, but if they have objectives, go ahead and list them. But take the 50 goals and put them into certain categories, and then bring them back to us so we can look at them at the next town board meeting.
That sounds good to me.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
Yes, I'll make that a motion.
I'll second it.
So the motion is to have Mr. Kohlbarger or staff compile this list into a manageable document, eliminating duplicates, and bring it back to the next meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is it possible to have him separate the ones that are ongoing from everything else? Because so many of these are actually in process.
Well,
They're
that
not
would be,
end goals.
it would have to be 3 different categories: ongoing, short-term, and long-term.
That I could agree with, because, for example, these town board goals going back from 2008, most of those are actually in process. Some of them have been completed. So that's why I think we definitely need an ongoing category.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
It might be helpful, as Mr. Kobarger does very well, as he brings in the town board members one or two at a time. Now, that could be a process also, that we would individually or as two at a time sit with Mr. Kobarger and work through the goals and objectives with him.
That's well within his power, yes.
I actually recommended to him that next year that he sit down and do that before you even submit them and put them into the backup, because if you can see that he's completed something, mostly has it done, it's an ongoing thing, you may not want to keep it as a goal.
Okay, so we do have a motion to have Mr. Kohlberger
Divided into long-term, short-term, and ongoing, and eliminate the duplicates.
Compile all 50 goals.
But
and bring it back to the next meeting.
why do you want all 50 if they're duplicates?
Because they're there, and he needs to bring them all back and show us which ones are duplicates so that we can have those deleted. If he just deletes those, then we don't know. So take all 50, put them in the different categories, just as you stated, and they could be in 3 different categories or even 4. Doesn't matter. But an easy-to-read document.
A red line version. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We have to be also very aware of timelines, because the evaluation, town manager evaluation, needs to be completed by January 31st. And it's my understanding at the last town board meeting that the goals and objectives were to be addressed first. But certainly we have to get into the process and the timelines, the evaluation, because we now only have September, October, and November and December, and November and December will be short months because of the holidays. So we're again cutting it short to complete a comprehensive evaluation. So
That's why I wanted to go through it tonight.
So I hope we can get it resolved next meeting and also address the evaluation. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Doesn't everybody like to work under stress? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to let you know, the evaluation will be brought back on the next town board meeting. It will be put on the agenda. It's already done and ready to rock.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, I did request that.
All right, item number 8, discussion, possible decision on canceling the town board meetings of November 22nd, 2011, and December 27th, 2011, due to holiday season, and approval of the accounts payable for the aforementioned dates. Mr. Kohlberger?
Yes, Mr. Darby, thank you, if I may. This is kind of an annual thing. The 22nd is close to Thanksgiving, which is actually the 24th, and the 27th is very close to the 25th. Matter of fact, it's 2 days past it. Monday, the 26th, will actually be the day off, the holiday for the staff. And in the past, the town boards have realized that a lot of staff, including town board members, are usually out of town on holidays for these, because they are big family holidays. People travel, and it's tough to get back and in and out during the holiday season. And if you approve this tonight, I would like the motion to basically read to approve canceling the town board meetings of November 22nd, 2011 and December 27th, 2011 due to the holiday seasons, and to authorize the signing committee to approve the accounts payables for the aforementioned dates. I'll answer any questions.
Ms. Parker?
This has been, those 2 dates, the last meetings in November and December have been canceled, probably going back a half a dozen years. We don't have to, but that has been pretty much the process, and I have noticed through the years the past two when I was on the board and also prior to that, that the agendas in November and December, even with only one meeting, tend to be very light. So I would recommend that we go ahead and cancel these meetings.
Is that the motion?
I can make a motion. I can move that the town board cancel. Oh, you wrote it out for me. Motion to approve canceling the town board meetings of November 22nd, 2011, and December 27th, 2011, due to the holiday seasons, and to authorize the signing committee to approve the accounts payable for the aforementioned dates.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion from the board?
Yes, I was wondering about the approval of the accounts payable for the aforementioned dates. Are you talking about, take November as an example, we would do all the Novembers in November? Is that what you mean?
Well, what that means is you and I go in and sign them, and they've been approved already, so they can pay them.
I see. Personally, I would rather not, I mean, I'd rather reschedule our meetings even if it was 2 Tuesdays in a row, but I don't know, because we don't know what the future brings, and I'm thinking there might be some things coming up in respect to the theme park and so on, so I don't know.
If you really had to, you could schedule
Mr. Chairman?
Is that a possibility that we, if we did need a meeting, that we could go ahead and schedule it anyway? Okay,
Yes.
then I'm okay with it then.
Ms. Endesby?
Yeah, I think I had that same question, Mr. Culkin.
Turn the mic on.
I believe I had that same question. The concern is that if we're going to complete our goals and objectives and evaluation, I certainly would want it done. And I'm not sure also when the other agenda item regarding the theme park will be coming back. Isn't that due back within the next few months?
Yes.
Yeah, so depending on how all that goes, I certainly would like to make sure we have the option to reschedule a meeting rather than just leaving it canceled.
Mr. Darby, if I may.
Please.
Town board always has an option to create a special meeting at any time they deem necessary, as long as we do the 3-day notice and set it up properly.
Thank you. There doesn't seem to be any statement regarding November 8th. That's Election Day.
Okay, we cancel all of them for the rest of the year. No, yeah. You know, in the past, the reason why, sir, is because they moved the Root Center, and we couldn't use the Root Center, and now we hear there should be no problem. So
Okay.
vote early and vote often. I mean, vote early.
Yeah, right, okay. Well, I wanted that clarified. Did that answer your questions? Sorry about interrupting that.
Yes, I know the county commissioners canceled one of their meetings, so did we double check and make sure we have access during election here? Okay, thank you.
Dr. Waters?
Nothing.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion from the board. We'll open this up to public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 9, discussion possible decision to approve a mutual aid agreement and MAA between the town of Pahrump Valley Fire and Rescue Services, Nye County Emergency Service, and Nye County Sheriff's Office, and all matters properly related thereto. Chief Lewis, this has your name on it.
As I was going to state, if you have any questions, I was going to invite Chief Lewis down to speak on it. Basically, this came about through a series of meetings, lots of meetings. The last one had the county in it, town, sheriff's department, the new district attorney, a After about an hour and a half, it was halted with agreement that the district attorney and Chief Lewis would get together and talk about several issues. Chief Lewis did meet with the district attorney. District attorney rewrote some of the mutual aid agreement and sent it out for approval. After about 3 months span, I sent him back an email asking him where it stands, and I got an email back from him saying that it is good to go. And Chief Lewis will be glad to answer and pick up anything that I forgot.
The document that you have before you this evening was actually drafted or authored by the district attorney. We had several meetings regarding the applicable laws, the regulations, the codes, the NRSs that pertain to our authority within the town of Pahrump, and that document is a product of those meetings and as a result of the meetings that Mr. Kohlbarger referenced. Any additional questions? I'll be glad to answer them for you.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
Just congratulations on finally getting it done. I know you've been working on it for years.
Mr. Colton?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Chief Lewis if he was happy with this.
I'm not sure it's really an issue of being happy, Mr. Colkin. I think that the language follows the law that we established back in 2005, and I think it's just come full cycle. I think there have been a number of questions over the years and some concerns on some parties, but I think that the document tonight is the result of the district attorney's due diligence and the review and the result of those meetings.
Would I be correct as an example, let's say you called for help, that you would be the person in charge? If someone from the county called for your assistance, then that person would be in charge? Is that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Hennessy?
Yes, thank you, gentlemen, for all your hard work. I have a question for Sheriff DeMeo.
Yes.
And thank you for being here.
Good evening, Town Board.
Good evening. The question I have is on number D, and that is the dispatch emergency response service. I attend the county commission meetings, and I know through the months that there's been some budget questions. You've had some changes on staff, the new jails coming in. I'm wondering if you could just let us know how the dispatch is going to work, if it's changed any, just kind of fill us in on what's happening with dispatch.
Well, dispatch will always dispatch. As you're aware that the county opted for this furlough program. I have objections to that because basically they didn't take into effect that dispatch is on demand. But we're going to do what we have to do. Law enforcement, emergency services, whether fire, police, no matter what the emergency is, we always pull together and deal with the issue. 911, perfect example. As bad as that event was, and I know I've lost 13 friends in that, law enforcement friends in that tragedy. New York City Police Department still dispatch cars to other emergencies, and New York City Fire Department still responds to fires in other parts of their jurisdiction. And dispatch was dispatching. You know, we have a lot of flexibility in the way we operate, and I'll do a lot of out-of-box think and creative ways of managing our incidents. So we're going to continue to dispatch for the fire department. We're always going to be putting public safety above, and I know that people keep hearing the budgets, but my job is a moral obligation. And as Chief Lewis and anybody in this type of profession has, is to the moral obligation to provide emergency services, first response to anybody asks for it, and we'll answer for that. We'll answer for that those consequences when they come up. So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, and I thank you for the answer, because I know that is a concern. That's the first thing that somebody does, of course, if there is an emergency, is they're told to dial 911 and to make sure there's somebody on the other side of that call is appreciated. And even though we are in financial straits, we appreciate the fact that you're making sure we're attended to. So thank you.
And I have to thank my staff, because they're the ones that put that commitment in to that service. So.
Thank you. Dr. Waters?
Yes, I've been working with Chief Lewis and the DA, and I know we had the meeting and the sheriff was there as well. Ms. Endersby's question, I may have heard something that I didn't hear, or I do need clarification. If somebody dials 911 within the town of Pahrump, according to the agreement, you would dispatch Pahrump Fire and Rescue. If it's outside of the town of Pahrump, you would dispatch Nye County Emergency Services.
Well, it depends upon the incident. And let me just say this, is that, and no fault against with Chief Lewis or Bill Kobarger, the only meeting we attended was the meeting about over 3 months ago. No one, repeat, no one, not coming to the sheriff's office, Captain Beck, to me, to review this MOU. There are flaws with the MOU, basically flaws with the MOU. And I explained to communicate with the DA. It limits my authority to call who I want. Now, regardless, and I'll say this, there is no argument with the Nye County Sheriff's Office that the fire suppression, fire prevention, EMS is the purview and the jurisdiction of Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue Service. And believe me, I appreciate the dedication the men and women have in that organization, that service. We work close together. There isn't one time emergency has occurred that we haven't got that incident addressed. Scott Lewis and I have been on several scenes where my people have been shot, and on one fatally, where we dealt with citizens who were in great need. So that's not the issue. But the issue comes with me being able as a sheriff to call resources that I believe are the best resources to call. And understand, I mean, I'm the sheriff of a county where this law enforcement agency has very limited resources. In my other life, those were not there. I was the hazmat, we were a hazmat response team. We were the heavy rescue team. In fact, in my county, I was the only one trained, and my unit was the only one trained to conduct a lot of emergencies that occurred within that county, Hudson County. I trained EMS, I trained firefighters, I trained in hazmat, I trained in the operational levels, I certified in hazmat level 1. I managed a bomb unit and dealt with terrorist attacks. So I know the capabilities of when I call for resources, I don't just do it because for study, I do it from practical knowledge. And I understand the limitations of both agencies, and I understand the strengths of both agencies. I understand the strengths of my office, I understand the limitations of my office. The only thing the MOU doesn't give me is the flexibility to call for those resources which I believe, or my staff believes, will better manage those type of emergencies. No disrespect to Nye County EMS, but there are times when I'm going to call the agencies out that have better experience and better qualifications, and and utilize those resources to the best of the ability to protect and serve the citizens of Nye County, which is a responsibility I serve. Fire department, their responsibility in Pahrump Valley for the outlines of here. EMS has other responsibilities. And understand, I mean, EMS responds to Beatty, Amargosa, Gabbs, Manhattan, Smoky Valley, Hadley, to areas where we have very limited resources, and they do a very good job. So they're very qualified in certain areas. Like I said, is that I want to make sure that I have the flexibility, that my staff has the flexibility to call to those scenes the agencies and resources that we know and we feel are going to best serve the safety of the community and the safety of the first responders.
Sheriff
and that doesn't do it.
If I might say, for law enforcement, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I would agree with that. For fire, I don't see why you would not defer that to the fire chiefs or the person in charge of Nye County.
We're not talking, and no disrespect, we're not talking about fire suppression, fire prevention, or we're not talking about EMS. Those issues are not on this table. And I'll tell you the truth is I agree with Scott Lewis. Those issues shouldn't be there. We recognize and always have recognized the jurisdiction of the Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue Service. these issues are legacy issues that proceed even before I was sheriff of Nye County, that when I was a deputy. And these are not the new issues. So this thing has been going on. I've been in law enforcement in Nye County over 12 years now. So these are things that we hope to get ironed out. But you know, honestly, the first time I saw the MOU was when it was on the agenda page for the town board meeting. And I can have Captain Beck speak. He speaks for dispatch and South Area Command, which is the responsibility where Plum Valley Fire Rescue is, and where this conflict is with EMS and the other agency. And honestly, the conflict is this. Everybody wants to respond and provide their best services for the citizens. There's nothing to do with everybody wants to pull away from something like this. But you know what? Everybody wants to go in and lend a hand to save lives and protect the community we serve. Everybody. Scott Lewis, his firefighters, EMS, Nye County Sheriff's Office, and you, the town board, as well. I know all of you. And I know that you always want the best things for the citizens. It has to do with the discretion outside of those areas which are not fire suppression and not fire prevention and not EMS, but in areas where there's other types of hazards.
So
and,
what part of the MAA are you finding disagreement with?
But I'm going to have to tell you the truth. Until we look at this, and one thing it says in my statute, 248, I mean, believe me, I got 17 pages of responsibilities as Nye County Sheriff, and 17 pages, not just the 248 that's mentioned. But 248, 092 says all searches and rescues are the responsibility of the sheriff. And that is not even anywhere in this MOU. And it says search and rescues, search and rescues. So basically, if I was to get myself a first response unit with extrication equipment, I can base myself say I'm a rescue unit, because basically by this statute and by definition, search and rescues perform are the responsibility of the sheriff. So what I'm saying is that there's certain gray areas which Harley, Vicky, Mike, and Tom Waters are the ones that that we have issues with, and we have to get those things ironed out. I spoke to Bill Kobarger earlier today, and I had to apologize. I said, this is the first time I saw the MOU. There are issues with it. There has been steps forward in this MOU, but after that meeting we had, which was lasted about an hour and a half, as they say down in Las Vegas, it went dark for us. And now the curtains came up, and we see a different show than what we expected to see before us on a piece of paper and an MAA, whatever you're going to call it.
Let me comment on one other thing. When you look at the purpose of this MAA, the purpose here and the purpose that you're giving, the purpose you're giving is a little bit beyond the purpose of this MAA, from what I'm reading.
If it's not in writing, and those areas are not in black and white, then they're always going to be in dispute, sir. And no disrespect. Honestly, I've been down this road before. When the fire department in Jersey City didn't have enough work to do, and they started coming into scenes that we actually had jurisdiction responsibilities over. And until those things get ironed out, sitting down, I sat down with fire chiefs, I sat down with commanders and directors and everything like that with my staff, and saying, we got to get these things ironed out. Not because when we get to a scene, we're not going to take care of the scene. That's the most important thing. But it's the gray areas that everybody's saying, where do we fit in to the great picture? And what I want is that to be in black and white, where it can be. Not that we get to a scene and we're trying to say, well, I'm in charge, I'm in charge, I'm in charge. And what gets done is that, it's not what's going to serve the best for the citizens of Nye County. And I tell you the truth, we work through these issues at the scene, but they always seem to leave a little bit, a lot when we leave, that someone feels dissatisfied and someone feels their jurisdiction or their authority has been trampled on.
Now, Sheriff, I really understand what you're saying, and I understand that when you look at the purpose of this, there are some other areas outside of the purpose of this. But shouldn't there be maybe an MAA for those things as well, not so much this? And as soon as you saw this, and I was at the meeting, And I took for granted that when the county DA put down Sheriff DeMayo on here, that Sheriff DeMayo had already seen it.
No,
But because it's a county function, the town was not going to handle that. The town looked at it, and we looked at the parts that we felt were okay. And again, we got it from the county DA. No disrespect to the town attorney, but the town attorney didn't have anything to do with this. It was the county DA.
I understand.
So shouldn't you have your disagreement with the county DA?
Well, this is the issue. I mean, it gets pushed forward. I mean, and I don't know what the vote's going to be. It gets pushed forward. And honestly, my name was misspelled, so I think that if they're going to actually, type up an MOU or something like that, they would at least have enough, sense to spell my name right. I mean, I spelled Bill Colbarge's name right, and it's not, I don't, in my iPhone, so it's not like Billy Kay's there. But the fact of the matter is that you could do whatever you want. And Bill, believe me, put anyone you want. I don't get insulted. But, and no disrespect, I understand what you're saying. And I may, but the fact of the matter is, sir, is that my name and this office that I represent is on that MOU, MAA, whatever they call it now. I mean, honestly, police, in law enforcement, we go by implied jurisdiction, implied response. We don't, MOUs are not something that we do in law enforcement or MAA, and we do implied. And basically, there's a statute in the NRS that basically covers that and court and along with the things. So for the most part, we don't get involved in these who's, what, or where. We call for help responds, and we just take care of issues. They go back to jurisdiction. We continue on ours, or if they need us, we go down there. But when the Nye County Sheriff's Office is on that, and all those other areas that are remaining and nebulous, or you can't really grasp them because it's they're still not settled. It creates a problem for us, honestly. Outside of those, the identified areas are that. I mean, the fire response, so on and so forth. But what we can call for a hazmat, or what we can call for other resources, leaves that, and actually in some areas just in the authority of the fire chief. And you know what? Honestly, I'm an elected official. I'm a police officer, but I also have responsibilities to community safety, as outlined in some of my responsibilities here as the sheriff of Nye County. I actually sit on the health board. I have other responsibilities than just law enforcement, quite a few actually. So what I'm saying is that I would ask that at least Scott Lewis and I, and Scott Lewis and I County Sheriff, sit down and just go over some of these areas that we can get these things settled. I believe we can do it. I know Scott. I respect Scott. We both come from the same area. Initially for first responders, and we talk the same language in a lot of respects. We all want to do the same thing.
But Sheriff, neither one of you are attorneys. And again, when we go to the district attorney to make sure everything is legally documented, now we're not saying that the other areas that you talk about are not valid. The other areas you talk about are valid, and I don't think they're going to change by this MAA.
They will, sir. No disrespect. And let me say this, no disrespect to the attorneys. When I see an accident or when fecal matter hits the circulating system, as they say, there's no attorneys there. There's us. And I want to make sure that we have this partnership, that there's no gray areas for that. And I've taken this, I mean, people might get insulted in my last comment, but I've got to tell you something. You know what? We're in this because we love what we do, and it's who we are. And for this area to be clouded again and present more issues, that I think at this juncture we can sit down and get these things ironed out is what we should be doing. And I know no disrespect for an attorney, but guess what? In the firefight or a motor vehicle accident or a fire, all I see there is us. And I think that's where it should be. And I appreciate that, Harley. Thank you.
Dr. Waters has the floor still, please.
I'd just like to say that again, and I don't want to repeat it too many times, but when we look at the purpose of this MAA, that we're not talking about all the other things that you're bringing in. And so I believe that this MAA will take care of the town, the county, and the sheriff's department.
and no disagreement, sir, it will cause problems. And I'll tell you right now, as it is written now, the sheriff's office will not sign that MOA or MAA, whatever you call it, because basically it does cause a problem. It takes a lot of the areas. If it was something minor, I would not be here arguing this point. Basically, if I saw something that was something like, oh, we can deal with it at that scene, or there would be no issues, it's not. And no disrespect, I don't think you're seeing what I'm seeing in it. You haven't worked in this field, in that respect. And no disrespect to your service as in the Air Force. But this is something that you're bringing the sheriff's office into it, and we're looking at this draft, this document that's in front of you today, that you're asking the Nye County Sheriffs will be part of. And you know what? Honestly, my staff and I just look at this. There's a lot of areas that are not covered that are going to just resonate the same issues we had before, and we're not going to get these things settled. But that's up to the town board to decide to take action on it. That's not me. I'm just here telling you that there are issues with that MOU, whatever the document creation is. The sheriff's office was at a 1.5-hour meeting. And the next thing I know is that this thing is documented over two and a half months later. No disrespect to Brian Kunze, he's been working on this, but there are issues that I don't think they kind of grasp my responsibilities, and they're just not. The discretion my deputies have. By that MAA, he can tell my deputies what to do. Guess what? The statute says no, and so does the Attorney General opinion say no. So I'm telling you right now is that there are issues there that someone comes on the scene and says, I'm in control, I can tell everybody what to do no matter what. And honestly, what the issue would feel like this, we get to a scene, all we have to do at the Nye County Sheriff's Office, say, Nye County Sheriff's Office, Squad 1, Incident Commander, and then we have a whole different animal altogether, and that would cause another issue we would have. And by the NIMS, Scott Lewis would have to accept that particular type of incident command. We don't want to do that. It's not necessary to do that. All we want to do is making sure, sir, and making sure that we have a document that when the incident is over, which is because we're still going to do a job. We haven't had this document in the sheriff's office or with the fire department for a long time. I mean, they had some kind of agreement. No one was always abiding by it. Did anybody complain about the lack of service or the type, or anybody not being properly serviced by emergency services in Nye County and Plum Valley? No, they haven't, and they never will. But when you put this thing to documentation, you put it to writing, you're holding us to, and you're giving the chief authority over my personnel. That is not going to happen because by law that can't happen. The county commissioners can't even go and give my deputy an order and tell them to go over here. By law, they can't do that. But what you're telling me is that by this document, you're now taking away the authority in Nye County Sheriff's Office, where I'm still liable for these individuals, no matter who tells them what to do or where. I'm still liable for them, and I'm liable for their safety. I'm liable for for making sure that things get done. And I'm being told that I can't call the resources to the scene that I believe necessary. No disrespect, sir.
Sure, but that's the only part in there that we agree on. Everything else you said is not in this document, has nothing to do with this document. The things you're bringing up, there is nothing in here that says Scott or Brett can tell your deputies what to do. There's nothing in here that says that. It only talks about them working together. That's all it does. And it also talks about the fact the sheriff's office will dispatch, if it's within the town of Pahrump Fire Department. If it's outside the town of Pahrump, then it would be Nye County. That's all this document says.
Right. Under what circumstance? Every circumstance?
No, it talks about it's only talking about fire suppression, pre-suspension, and other responses to fire, emergency medical, hazardous material emergencies.
And if you if you read that document, you would also find out that the MOU, whatever, it actually recognizes that Nye County Fire Department and Nye County EMS has jurisdiction in all unincorporated areas of Nye County. There's an issue with that.
That's why we're having the MAA. And you're talking about the town of Pahrump that has an elected town board. It puts us in a different category. And what I'm saying is, this document is good as it stands. All the things you're bringing up are outside of this document. And those things are going to happen. Police, when you get there, if there's a crime, you're going to be in charge. That's the facts. It doesn't have to say that in a fire document. This MAA has nothing to do with that. It only talks about dispatch.
No, and no disrespect, and and here's, my staff and I disagree with that. We discussed it, and we disagree. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Parker?
Yeah, Sheriff DeMayo, you carefully talked around issues on the table, gray areas. What is it you're talking about? Can you be specific?
I just mentioned there's other emergencies that are there, and that document basically doesn't cover those and you're saying it doesn't cover those areas. It does, in respect, it does.
Could you give us some examples? Gray areas, things on the table, things that are important to us, things you don't know about. That's not specific, so you're leaving us in the dark. I haven't a clue what you're talking about.
Well, I can't help that.
Well, you could be specific, Sheriff DeMayo, and you haven't been.
In what respect? I'll give you, for instance.
Give us some examples.
Hazmat.
That's reasonable.
Hazmat.
It says, if I remember right, in this document, it says that the town would take care of hazmat within the town limits. And you disagree with that?
Yes. What's a hazmat incident? Is a hazmat incident a bomb incident? Fire department has no training to deal with that, and the state and the NRS actually specifies the training required in that. But when we have those incidents, then we have the fire department says I'm in charge, and we already dealt with an incident that we did have some discussion over that. So those are issues that are relevant to us. I can call in who I want. The MOU says it's the fire department. I disagree. I dealt with hazmat. I dealt with hazmat, training in hazmat. I manage a bomb unit. I know the limitations of Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue. I know what the capabilities are, and I know the proper units to respond to that. We have that. We get an incident where we have, last night we had 1,700 marijuana plants. We just got that. We had the county EMS and hazmat team respond there. I have the right to call who, in those situations, who I want. That MOU doesn't specify that. The MOU basically tells me that I call Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue, and I believe that I have resources out there that can handle the situation as good as they can, and I will utilize those resources. You're telling crime scenes? That doesn't deal with, that's a crime scene. But yet, I'm being told, I got called Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue, so I don't have jurisdiction in those areas. So I'm basically saying is that, give us an opportunity to work these areas out. But as I said, Ms. Parker, as I said, is that would be something that, you have an action item. I'll respect the decision you make on that action item because that's within your ability to do that.
Although you've made it very clear that you don't intend to sign off on it, so.
Under its present form, because I think some of these issues could be worked out. There's a lot of progress that was made in that document, and I'm glad it was. I mean, some of those issues been dealing with for a long time. Never got this much progress, so I'm happy in that respect. But when you're telling me I can't call Armor, or I can't call another unit in there, I can't call my resources I believe are going to mitigate those issues and that's incident, then you're limiting me, and you're limiting the authority I have as the sheriff and as also someone as responsible for public safety as well. So that's what I'm asking. You said it wasn't in there. That's right. Those are in there. It has been an incident. I got to call Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue, and I disagree with that. Not because I believe I can call resources that are good, and some areas with more technical expertise than Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue has because they just don't have the training by the NRS. We talk about laws, that's the law. It's very specific in such circumstances who has the responsibility, who has the training, who has the expertise to deal with those situations. That document doesn't give me the ability to do that. Doesn't. So.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Culkin.
This is a mutual aid agreement, as it states, between the fire department and some of the county entities simply for emergency medical, hazardous material emergencies, and Pahrump Valley Fire and Rescue. You know, Sheriff DeMayo brings up some issues. Well, first of all, we can't have everybody fighting over who's going to charge while something's going on.
Thank you, sir.
So, in my opinion, that as an example, if the county is called to assist in Pahrump for the 3 issues that I mentioned, then obviously our fire chief would have the total authority over that situation. Now, as an example, you mentioned bombs. Well, if he didn't know anything about bombs, I couldn't imagine him saying anything other than, do your thing, whatever it is. I couldn't imagine we're going to argue about who's going to do what if he doesn't know what to do. So some of this just doesn't seem right. One of my concerns here is that you haven't had time to look at it, though, and it seems pointless tonight to vote on this thing if you're saying you're not going to sign it. We're just wasting our time. I'd like to ask Chief Lewis if he feels that if more time was spent, could some issues be worked out? Because obviously this has to be a compromise here. And then I'm not a fireman. I'm not a medical person. I'm not a sheriff's deputy, and neither is the district attorney. All the district attorney's looking at, whatever was in there, it all fits legal. We have to rely on you people for the needs to serve our community. And we want the best we can get, but we have to rely on your expertise. And there seems to be a little friction here. I'm a little surprised, frankly, that this is on our agenda tonight, and we're going to vote on something where we seem to have. Well, you're basically telling us what you are telling us. You're not going to sign it. So,
and I understand, Mr. I understand.
So it seems like it needs to go back to you guys to work out. But obviously, I got to ask the chief here if he feels that. In the best interest of the town, something could be worked out, or what would you like us to do tonight? I got to ask you, because, it's your field.
Whether the MOU is signed or not, the authorities don't change. As the sheriff is mentioning NRSs regarding some of those issues, the NRSs are equally clear on the fire responsibilities and that of the authority of the fire chief. And that's what District Attorney Kunze has researched and has arrived at that answer, and that's why you have that document in front of you this evening. And I understand what the sheriff is saying regarding bombs, for example, but there's apples and oranges in that discussion, and I don't think this is the appropriate forum for that type of discussion. But the responsibilities are clearly outlined, and I'll speak strictly for the fire service and the fire chief, and I'd be willing to share them with you directly at any time. In fact, it's whenever a fire code is adopted by the state fire marshal's office, that becomes law. That's clear under the NRS. And those authorities identifying EMS, fire, hazmat is all within that purview, and is very, very specific on who has the responsibilities in those issues. So I think that the argument we're having this evening is really not the point. The point is that when in the town of Pahrump, there's a dispatch mechanism that's going to take place. Now, whether additional resources are required or different resources, that's where a good command structure comes in and makes those determinations. And this is clearly not an issue of just trying to someone take over, for example, a fire chief taking over law enforcement responsibility. That's not the issue. But there are law issues pertaining to fires, and that includes investigations, whether it be a bomb, a vehicle fire, a structure fire. Our responsibility is to investigate each and every fire. That is a law responsibility. And so more often than not, we do that jointly with the sheriff's office. And whether it's applicable or not, we contact and summon the assistance from a deputy state fire marshal. By doing so and bringing the state in does not negate our authority and responsibility for the scene. It doesn't. It augments it by having another higher level, or in some cases, or someone with a little bit different responsibility in the same incident. And I think what this goal tonight, or this objective, was clearly to outline that the authority within the town of Pahrump, our service area, belongs to a Pahrump Fire Rescue. Dispatch is the mechanism in which those calls are sent out. If it's a law enforcement issue, like the sheriff mentioned marijuana, nobody has an argument with that. That is not an emergency. The sheriff clearly can have whoever he wants to collect his evidence. If there's an immediate life safety issue to our community where there's an imminent threat of fire or medical, that's where we come in, because that's our responsibility. And so it's just it's a general discussion, but for the purposes of tonight, it clearly states that Pahrump has the authority We have the responsibility to our community, and we exercise an MOU or mutual aid agreement, whatever is necessary, when applicable and when appropriate, requesting the right resources.
And I thank Scott for that. So, and basically, you have to understand something. Hazmat, a bomb could be a hazmat incident, it could be an explosive device, it could be a combination of both. That's what, and see, that's all that issue is just with the hazmat response, allow me to call the resources and not necessarily those of Plum Valley Fire Rescue. I agree, I agree with everything Scott said. I agree with that, and we have worked in that respect. But when it comes to an incident where it could be explosive device, a hazmat device, and bombs are hazmat both, and those clearly fall under the jurisdiction of law enforcement, that is the area where I want that discretion to call who I want. And then it may not be Plum Valley Fire Rescue. And I said, honestly, the conversation we just had, I believe probably within a couple hours we could sit down with Scott and we can hammer this out. If Scott disagrees with me, then, but we're closer with this MAA than we ever were before. And I appreciate the work that Brian Quincy did. And I appreciate the fact that it's in front of the public. We get these things ironed out. And that way 3 months we were waiting before in the dark. So we have made progress, and it's going to be up to Scott to want to sit down with me, and we'll hash this thing out. Probably do it over lunch. It's up to Scott. But I appreciate and I respect the fire chief.
What I'm trying to say boils down to this. The town of Pahrump has emergency services, fire and ambulance and so on, and if he calls for help, then obviously he has to take the lead on it. He's the one that controls it. And the reverse, if Mr. Jones calls for Mr. Lewis to help him in something outside of Pahrump in the county, then obviously Mr. Jones would have priority.
Exactly.
And there can't be no arguments about it.
And there's no argument about who's in charge at the scene of fire areas. Never in charge. He's the fire chief.
And for some
I don't run into burning buildings, and he doesn't run into firefights.
Right,
That's
so
we collect those lives.
If Mr. Lewis finds a bomb and he doesn't feel like he has bomb training, then obviously he's going to call somebody that does. I mean, it's just common sense. I don't think he'd risk his job or the safety of this community by trying to do something that he's not qualified or someone else isn't.
But
So I don't know what the argument is here.
I think we're confusing tactical considerations with the objective of an MOU. And I think that's where the crux of the problem is right now.
In that respect, I agree with Scott. We could sit down with this and we can iron this thing out very quickly.
Mr. Chairman.
If you move it forward, I'd still like the opportunity to talk to Scott and see if we can work out those areas where there's some, where they're just not clear.
I guess, like I said, these aren't my expertise. So I'll have to ask Mr. Lewis, do you feel that's a good idea, or that this board should do that? Or what?
And Harley, I do appreciate the time you guys took for this. I mean, I really do. I mean, I appreciate their input. But I like to get this thing moving forward because basically this has been something in our craw for, what, 12, 13 years? Whatever.
Well, so, Mr. Lewis, do you feel that if you took a little more time to work with the sheriff that you can both come back and
I think
support whatever is put before us, or do you think we're wasting our time?
No, I don't think it's a matter of wasting time. I think the MOU is just that. It's a memorandum of understanding. It's understanding that Pahrump Fire Rescue has primary and sole responsibility for fire, EMS, and hazmat. Now, when the sheriff has an issue specific that kind of treads that line, that's where we come together and consider tactical considerations as far as how we're best going to manage this incident. But Pahrump can't be eliminated from the equation, nor can the sheriff's office. And that's where that joint effort comes in. But the agreement as it is presented this evening is clearly just outlining the overall, the 40,000-foot level looking down responsibilities.
No, I agree, but if he won't sign it, it's meaningless. I'm looking for what it's going to take to get both of you to come here and say, hey.
And I'm saying there's an area there, a very minute area, where we have to get some consensus. But honestly, is that nothing's going to change. The sheriff's office will still continue to call Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue on those areas of EMS, fire suppression, fire prevention, all the areas we have. We're not here to be a stumbling block with this. We're trying to clear an area so when my dispatchers, and understand this, my dispatchers are the ones, and I have the tape recordings when I get calls from one party or the other yelling and screaming, why wasn't I dispatched? And I got news for you. I didn't bring that up, I'm bringing it up now. My dispatchers are not there to get abused by people from emergency first responders and their department heads. That's not their job. But that has happened. and I'm going to put a stop to it. And the only way we're going to put a stop to it is finally get this agreement done in a proper way so this doesn't occur. But my dispatchers got to get abused, phone calls from one party to the other. How come I wasn't called? How come they were called? And that's going to stop because my dispatcher's not there for that. My dispatcher's there to dispatch, and unfortunately, I got to bring that here. But that has occurred, and we have the recordings of those areas. And we just want these things to stop.
And
well,
that,
and
that
lies.
other board members have to say. Thank you.
Not from you, Holly.
Ms. Ennisby?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I feel like I'm in Washington, D.C. in a political arena with,
Deja vu.
and what I'd like to do is move that we approve a mutual aid agreement between Town of Pahrump, Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue Services, and Nye County Emergency Service, and Nye County Sheriff's Office, and all matters properly related thereto. And if there's any amendments or changes, that they come back for further approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board, Ms. Parker? Mr. Culkin?
Well, I'm just thinking, approving something tonight and the sheriff's not going to sign it, we should at least give him one more chance to come back.
I believe that's stated in the amendments.
Well, that's the,
That's what was stated.
this isn't going to be accepted, so basically, even if we approve it tonight, we're wasting our time.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we have the ability to sit down again and make any amendments or changes. And if the district attorney has put this together and presented it as a document that he feels is sufficient for what the purpose is, then I believe it's our responsibility to our citizens that we pass this and let the politics play out in the DA's office and let him mediate any further discussions. It's not for us to do that.
It has nothing to do with the DA's office. The DA's office simply makes sure everything in there is legal. But he's not a
Exactly.
firefighter, he's not a sheriff's deputy, and these two got to work their issues out. We can prove whatever we want tonight, but nothing is coming into effect because the sheriff isn't going to sign it. So I think it would behoove us to at least let them have a 2 weeks and come back at the next meeting, and then at least they tried to do something. Because the sheriff's saying he barely even saw this. So we have to be fair to everybody. He's not going to sign it, and the sheriff says he hasn't had enough time to digest this. The two haven't
And I
talked.
appreciate it. There's no
Mr.
politics
Chairman?
involved in this. Really, there's no politics. It's just fact of the matter is getting this thing done and getting it done right, so we're not back here, and I believe we can do that. But if you want to pass it with the amendments and making sure that, that the fire chief and I sit down and come back with an amendment, I'm agreeable to that. All I'm trying to do is get this thing done right, Harley and board, so we're not back at this juncture 2 years from now when one party or the other decides they're going to pull out of an MOU, which has happened the last time. The sheriff's office didn't pull out of it, another organization pulled out of it. And then we're back to this situation. I want to get it done so we're not back here again, and finally we can get this issue off the table for everybody. And I appreciate your time.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. This thing also involves county emergency service, so Mr. Jones is going to have to sign this document as well, correct?
That's the commission will sign it. Yeah, not Brent Jones. Brent Jones is appointed.
Well,
Mr. Waters had comments.
I'm just kind of surprised Mr. Jones isn't here giving his input about this. Does that mean that he accepts it as is, or?
I
what?
can't speak
matter
for
if Mr.
emergency
Jones-
services.
It doesn't matter if Mr. Jones signs it. Mr. Jones works for the Nye County Commission. Nye County Commission approves this. He'll sign it.
Dr. Waters?
Yes, I would like to say again, and we're talking about an MAA that the town needs to look at for the citizens of Pahrump. And that's what we're doing. And from everything I've read, it looks good for the citizens of Pahrump. And as the motion was made, the town of Pahrump should approve this, send it on to the county commissioners. And if there's a question, they can make changes and send it back to us. That's okay. But we need to move forward for the town of Pahrump. And all the other stuff, all the minutia that's been added to it, I don't see it as a problem when we're talking about the two fire departments and the sheriff dispatch. I understand what you're saying, Sheriff. I really do. But I think the town board needs to move forward. Send it to the county commission, and with your comments to the county commission and the DA, if there are changes made as amendments, then we can get it back again, and we can look at it again, and we can approve it again. But again, we need to look at it for the town of Pahrump.
Sir, and believe me, I appreciate that. I serve the town of Pahrump, I serve the county. And this is, this is a great county, and this is a great town. And there has not been a problem with response. And no one's going to complain that Sheriff's Office, Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue, EMS, has gotten into any conflicts on scene. But they haven't. It's the after. And the fact of the matter is who's responsible for who, and who starts screaming and yelling at my dispatchers. And it's an opportunity to finally get this done with the proper thing is that I can call who I want to, and that may not necessarily be your Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue. No disrespect to that service, sir, but the fact of the matter is my staff has capabilities, and I have capabilities calling the best people possible. This is where that little bit of disagreement in that document can cause an issue. Okay, and that's what it is. And I will end my comments from there.
I call for the vote.
Thank you.
I would really like an opportunity to speak myself.
Okay, thank you.
May I add one other comment, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, don't forget public.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say that none of this can happen if we don't send it to the county commission. That's why we need to do that. Thank you.
Sheriff DeMeo, congratulations on your drug bust. That was quite an impressive load of material that was seized. I did have a question regarding the part of this MAA that's brought into question, which is item number 1, and it has to deal with hazardous materials, as you were saying. When was EMS called in on this particular incident?
They called yesterday, day before yesterday, on that. That was day before yesterday. We still haven't finished the press release. I know we're just getting all this stuff into evidence, so.
And because of my job that I have during the day, I took a lot of that stuff and processed it there at the landfill. Was there any concern for fire in handling the lights and the liquids and?
No, we used Nye County EMS. They're trained in that. We used them as our response unit.
That's where I can see the problem is with number 1 here, because it talks about using Pahrump Valley Fire and Rescue Service in all hazards.
And that's what we're saying.
I can see that in that incident that would be an issue.
And this is the issue, and I know that you guys have been more than patient with me, and I appreciate that. It's okay for Nye County EMS to handle dead bodies. That's okay. That's a hazmat incident. That's a biohazard incident, but that's okay. Because then we start splitting the hairs with it's a biohazard, but it's not necessarily a hazard, a hazmat incident. And I've heard that, I've heard that basically stated at scenes. That's the issue. So it's okay for this, but it's not okay for that, and you're splitting here. All I'm asking for is this. If there's an issue where I can call Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue for hazmat incident, I'll do that. But I also want the ability, the discretion to call Nye County EMS for the hazmat incident, as well as the Las Vegas, their armor unit, and Las Vegas fire response for their expertise in the community. That's all I'm asking for. We can get that in the document somewhere. We're done. We're finished. You'll never see me here for that again.
But the question is, do you have the authority to override our fire chief in our community?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, and I'm going to end my comment. I appreciate it. Thank you again. I appreciate your patience, and thank you.
So you're calling for the vote without any public discussion?
No, I'll take my call back.
Thank you. All right, we'll open this up to public discussion.
George Gingell. I like the sheriff, I like the fire chief, but the thing is, neither one of them are the dispatch. The dispatcher is the one that's sending the people out, whether it's the fire department, the sheriff's department, or Nye County hazmat or whatever they call themselves. And if any of them have a problem with it, I think they ought to call the sheriff, tell them to call the sheriff directly or to call the fire chief directly and let them two fight it out and leave the dispatchers out of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Cox. I came in a little late here. Doesn't Nye County have a hazmat team? Well, if they have a hazmat team, why do we need two? Let the county handle it. I've never heard of a fire department going on scene and doing a bomb threat of any kind anywhere in the country. That's the sheriff's job. Let him do it. Let Chief Lewis do his fighting on his fires, what he needs to do. But as far as the bombs go, it should be the sheriff's job. I'm sorry, and we have a hazmat already in Nye County. Why do we have two? To me, that's ridiculous. It's a waste of money, waste of time. I think the sheriff has the control over this, and if Coonsies give you guys that impression, I think it's wrong, because the sheriff has a lot of pull in this county, and I know you guys know that. So I would hate to see the sheriff lose the capability of taking care of a bomb threat when he's the one that's entitled to do it. Let them fight their fires, let him take care of the bomb. This whole thing don't make no sense, especially when the Nye County's got a hazmat team. Doesn't make any sense. Two entities again in a little town like Pahrump. Waste of money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, board members, very quickly, this is not about...
State your name,
Oh,
please.
I'm sorry, William Becht, Captain, Nye County Sheriff's Office. This has nothing to do with fire responsibility or the suppression of fire or emergency medical calls within Pahrump. This is the discretionary areas regarding hazardous response, things that aren't so very clear. But it's delineated very plainly in here. PVFRS shall be dispatched to respond to all emergency calls within the area of its sole and primary responsibility. This is recital number 1. Recital number 2, first sentence is, PVFRS shall direct what service necessary for mutual aid and agrees to request the service of NCES before requesting mutual aid from any other agency. Whether it's NCES, the armor unit from Metro, Clark County Fire, BLM Fire, or whatever, that's the discretion that is being referred to with our dispatch centers and the Sheriff's Office command staff in whatever area. Whether it's, we're talking about Pahrump specifically, but if it was Beatty that we were sitting in front of, it'd be the same argument in front of the Beatty Town Board. This is not personal between the NCES, the NCSO, and the PVFRS. This is a matter of having discretion to do the job, trusting professionals to do the job. Unless you have any other questions, I'll keep it short and give a minute and a half to Mr. Maurizio.
Thank you.
I have a question. I've heard two terms being thrown around, an MOU.
State your name, please.
Frank J. Maurizio, Pahrump. An MOU and a mutual aid agreement. Which one is it?
It's a mutual aid agreement.
Well, now, I know where Sheriff DeMayo comes from. I worked 13 miles from him for 22 years in law enforcement. Mutual aid agreement does not include law enforcement. It's for fire and EMS only. They use the ICS command system, and it goes from the town or city to the county to the state. Now, you got to get your priorities straight. Is it an MOU or an MMA or an AA, whatever you're calling it? Shouldn't be including law enforcement in this agreement. I come from a township, had 9 towns. Each one had their own fire department and EMS. They had mutual, if the fire was in one section of town, that fire department had control. The mutual aid agreement was for him to call in whatever he needed. He could call one other fire department from the next town to sit in his house and watch for fires in his while he's battling something else. That's the way it should be going, not the way we sit here for an hour wasting time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Goldstein, Pahrump resident. Who wrote this? District Attorney. Why am I not surprised? He is not a law enforcement officer, just like Harley says. He is not a firefighter. The sheriff just said this is basically the first time he's seen this. So why are we letting a district attorney write something that doesn't involve him other than the legality of it? The fire department and the sheriff's department and whoever is in charge of Nye County Emergency Services should have sat down and wrote this thing. This thing is useless. We need to throw it in the garbage can and let these 3 people write it themselves, and then let the district attorney look at it and see what's legal and not legal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Stevens, taxpayer. Most people in this town really don't understand or know what the power the sheriff has got. He is probably the most powerfulest man in the county. Well, I know you shake your head, but it's true. I used to have coffee with the sheriff up in Snohomish County, and a few things people don't know that they think they know. Not that I know anything. I'm always putting my foot in my mouth. And I like the fire chief, and I like the prosecutor. But a lot of people don't understand the power the sheriff has got. They don't. I was in jail one time. Sheriff come right up and knew him. He come right up and got me out. Was drunk.
One time?
That's all, just once. Just once. And I haven't had a drink in 20 years. But he had enough power to do that, so I got to go along with the sheriff on this one. Yes, sir. And we're not in the Army either. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl Sensky. First off, I have an enormous amount of respect for both these gentlemen, the sheriff's department, the fire department. When you come from Las Vegas at night and you head into Pahrump, you see where the lights start and where the lights stop. You know, they're both undermanned. They have to, incredible area to cover. So I just want to make that clear. I think both of them are doing a fine job, but on this particular issue, sometimes we can go back in history. And Dr. Waters, you know, I think you'll remember the Iran rescue when we had all the hostages in Iran. Do you understand what made that go horribly wrong, where it was a complete failure? It was one problem: clear and concise line of authority. And I think that's all that's being asked here, is not the what-ifs, not the could-bes, a clear and concise line of authority. And I think that's all that's being asked, and I would agree to that. History proved that. You know, that was probably one of the saddest days that I remember. And that's all it was that made that a complete failure, the lack of that. So I would ask that you consider that.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Arthur Jones, concerned citizens, taxpayer. I'm going to use a phrase that majority of us in here heard that phrase before. It seems what we have here is a failure to communicate. The problem is that the sheriff have a job to do. The fire chief have a job to do. Town board have a job to do. District attorney have a job to do. So I'm letting you know each step at a time. If you don't know, if we have a hazardous problem down here, and it concerns the sheriff, the government cannot come down here and dictate on what to do until they cleared it up with the sheriff. That's the kind of power our sheriff has. It has to go through him. So what I would like for you, five, to do is table this and get a complete understanding who's supposed to do what, when it's supposed to do what, and who got to be in charge of what department it is. 2 more weeks, it's not going to be in a hill of beans. You don't have nothing but time on your hands. So let's put this away and put it to bed for a while. We've been on this an hour and a half, pretty close to an hour and a half. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
And this is not a paid commercial.
All right, seeing nobody else up for public comment, we do have a motion on the table to approve the mutual aid agreement between the town of Pahrump and Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue Services, Nye County Emergency Service, Nye County Sheriff's Office, and all matters properly related to, with the provision to come back with amendments.
If necessary.
I'm sorry?
That was if necessary.
Oh, if necessary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Motion carries 3-2.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Waters?
before the vote, you didn't ask if we had any other comments from the board members. I know we've already voted, but I would like to make a comment on that.
Could you reserve that for town board member comments, please?
Okay.
Item number 10, discussion possible decision to approve the town board retreat as well as creating a time, date, and location for the town board retreat. Mr. Kohlberger.
Yes, sir. I brought this back pursuant to the previous town board meeting where pretty much everybody was in agreement to hold a retreat. It is now an official item, action item. And if you're going to hold a retreat, you obviously need to determine time, date, and whereabouts. There was some stuff thrown around as to when and where. There was a comment brought up that we could hold it in Reno at the attorney's office. There was also another comment brought up that we could hold it just before the Nevada League of Cities meeting in Mesquite in October. What is something the town board needs to decide, and I also included a draft, as you can see, agenda as to how it would relate to a retreat. Be glad to answer any questions, and so would Mr. Seaton from the legal department.
Thank you. Ms. Parker? Mr. Calkin?
Yes, I like the idea of the retreat, and I also like the idea of maximizing the most input that we can get all the way around. I like the Reno idea, and then I started thinking about it a little bit, and I thought that having lived in northern and southern Nevada, I thought it was a really good idea for this board, because some of the board members may have never been to northern Nevada, and I've said many times that it's like a different planet. And I thought about it a little bit more, and I thought that maybe it'd be a better idea instead of Reno, maybe stay in Gardnerville, like at the Carson Valley Inn. It's just down the hill from Tahoe. It's a small county, about the same size as Nye County. It's a rural community, and I thought that if we're up there as individuals, if we went around on our own and looked around, I think you get some ideas of what an efficient community, rural community runs like, and it might give us some ideas to bring back on what we could do here. And like I said, maximizing our effort here, and that would be my suggestion. It's a little closer, and unless you fly, you'll have to come down from Reno. But it's I think it'd be really enlightening of how a successful rural community operates, and I think it would do well for us to see that as well as have the retreat.
Thank you. Ms. Endersby?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also agree that a retreat for the board to come together and deliberate on various issues or communication with each other is always good. The agenda does seem to concentrate on communication. And I personally don't think there is a problem with communication. I'm not sure why there's so many items on communication. I meet on a regular basis. I have a whole book of notes that I meet with the town manager. I meet with the county people. I don't feel myself personally that the agenda should contain some of the concerns about communication between anybody. We have to meet open meeting laws, but I do feel a retreat would be helpful to look at planning a path for the future and throwing around ideas. I have a concern about the cost. I don't think we should travel out of town. I like Mrs. Parker's idea of doing it around the Muskie trip maybe, or at some time where we can just go locally and still feel like we're on a retreat. I also have a concern on who's going to lead the retreat, who's going to moderate it. I think it's important that that person be skilled at leading it, and that I think the agenda needs to be reworked. We come back with some more particulars on what can really be achieved. I think just sitting around talking about talking is probably not an efficient use of individuals' times. But I would support having a retreat if we can get a better handle on having it local and having some agenda items that would make a difference for the community.
Dr. Waters?
Yes, sir. I'm in favor of a retreat, and I looked at items on the agenda, items number 4, number 6, and number 7, again, dealing with communication, because I have noticed that there have been some problems in communication between the board, between the town manager and the board, or between each other. And I think there are times that we do need to have that. When the item of a retreat first came up, it was discussed that we would have presenters in these particular areas that were experts to give us information, guidance, NRS information on how to be better board members. And that's what we need to do. Do we know our jobs completely? Hey, we're learning. We're OJT, on-the-job training as we go along. In many cases, we're reading NRSs. We're meeting other people in other communities to try and find out how to do our jobs better. The retreat will definitely help us. As far as where it should be, I don't have a clue on that. I'll go with the rest of the board on that as far as where it is. But we should definitely have a retreat.
Quite frankly, I agree. I like the draft idea. I like the way you presented it. I do agree that there are some items that could be added to it. And that's why it's in big, beautiful letters, it says draft. So are we going to make a motion for the board to have a retreat and possible set a time, date, and location for this retreat?
Well, I'll make a motion to go ahead and have this retreat. I'd like to hear what the board would work out well as a date, and like I said, in Gardnerville. So I'm open to the date and the month, time of day and all that. Should this be a 2-day deal or a 1-day deal? Like I said, I'd like to incorporate also that board members have a time to go out on their own in the community that I think that they'll be able to gain some beneficial knowledge that they can bring back and use here. So I'd like to see a couple days, and I'm open to whatever works well for the board. I'm pretty open, but I know maybe some of you have some considerations.
I myself agree with the ladies, and I would like to see it happen up in Mesquite in October. But that's why I'm the chair. I don't make motions. Is there a second?
Is there a motion?
He made a motion for Gardnerville? Seeing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. Is there a possibility of a second motion?
I'd like to move that we approve a town board retreat at the October, I believe it is, right? October NACO meeting? No, the League of Cities, I'm sorry. Forgetting where I'm going. League of Cities, and we designate either extra time to attend and have the retreat at that time with a trained facilitator that will bring an agenda from suggestions from the town board.
Mr. Darby, if I may, before it's seconded?
Please.
Good suggestion, thank you. I would like to, throw out the fact that you have October 3rd and 4th before the 5th through the 7th.
And that would be a great time to do, is right before the Nevada League of Cities. And we're going to be in Mesquite, so I can just book an extra room, and we're getting cheap rates thanks to the Nevada League of Cities, and do it right before instead of after, because after is the weekend, Saturday, Sunday. So if you do it Monday, Tuesday, it'd be good, which would be the 3rd and 4th.
Mr. Chairman, with the travel day, we're talking about 4 days already with what we're going to be doing, and now you want to add another day or two? That doesn't work for me, because I'm an owner-operator business, and I really can't disappear that long. That's why I never go on vacation. That's just too much time in a row.
You can't do it on a Saturday and Sunday after?
I work on this time of year. People call me Saturday, Sundays, everything.
October.
October's still kind of warm, or they're trying out their heaters. I know that's an awful long time to be away. So now you're talking about 6 days being out of Pahrump here.
Mr. Darby, if I may again? The reservations are already for the 4th, because we have meetings that start at 8 a.m. on the 5th. So you just get up early on the 4th and travel there, and we could start this retreat around 10 a.m. and stop at around 5 p.m. And I will look for a facilitator. I've actually contacted Mrs. Fretwell, the city manager in Vegas, and she's got 3 names for me, and she's sending me those information. They're the same facilitators that run the City of Las Vegas's retreats, ma'am, through the chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so you're saying you could fit this in with the dates that are already there?
The 4th, we show up on the morning of the 4th, and I find us a place to meet in Mesquite, because we got to be in there by the 4th anyway, because again, we have meetings at 8 a.m. on the 5th, and no one wants to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and travel to Mesquite. So I've already booked the rooms for the 4th.
Yeah, and you could actually run into the afternoon, maybe into the evening.
Correct. Yeah, if you can make it work within the dates that are already going to be there, then I'm fine with that.
That's what I'm trying to do.
All right.
Do I need to amend something?
I would hope so.
All right.
Unless you just want me to abbreviate it.
Go ahead and abbreviate it.
So the motion is to have our retreat with a trained mediator on Tuesday, October 4th in Mesquite, prior to the Nevada League of Cities meeting. Does that work?
Time and place to be determined later.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion from the board? Ms. Parker? Mr. Colvin? Ms. Andersby?
I believe I did also add that the board members bring agenda items or topics to be discussed.
Mr. Darby,
We can't do that.
that's what the trained facilitator will be doing, sir.
Okay, setting the agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, then this agenda is not applicable anymore.
Just says draft.
Thank you, Mr. Darby.
Okay, well,
Dr. Waters?
Yeah, since we're talking about starting early on the 4th, is it okay to arrive on the 3rd? For those of us that don't have a business.
Yes? Yes?
Okay.
No other comments?
Just start at noon and run into the evening.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Any comment from staff?
None.
I'll open this up to public comment.
Hello, my name is Victoria Webster, and to save money, you should go to Carpenter Canyon. It's a beautiful place. My Papa Mike and my Grandma Sandy, we went to Carpenter Canyon for a 4-H trip, and it was very fun. There was a few lakes, some fish, and you could hike there. And thank you.
Thank you.
I'd love to go to Carpenter.
Yes, sir.
Dave Stevens again. I'm in favor of this. Colburn ought to give you a few $1,000s so you can really have a good time up there. And then just stay away from here and let the audience conduct the meeting for a change. Around here, we might get something done. Thank you. Huh?
I ain't got the money.
Yeah, the town's loaded. You know, we got plenty of money here. All kinds of money. Huh?
Can I borrow 10 grand?
Yeah, but I have to charge you a little interest on it now. No, that we could have a nice meeting here, the audience. You guys could go up there and get your little that sweet wine and lay back and kind of relax a little bit there and have a good time. You've been working too hard here.
I appreciate that, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesus, I got a whole bunch of minutes left. I'm going to get out of here while I got a chance.
Yes, my name is Arthur Jones again. How many days is this retreat going to be? One day?
One day.
Well, we could spend that one day right down here in Pahrump and enjoy yourself. That way we all can have a chance to participate on this retreat. I know it should be opened up to the public and the taxpayers to know exactly what you are retreating for, what you're thinking about, and what you're talking about. So look at the money you save by having it down here somewhere in Pahrump, like Wolfie's or Silhouette. They have a nice meeting room. And at the same time, the taxpayers who's paying for this can be able to come down and just don't ask no questions. Just sit down and relax and listen to your retreat for this one day to see if we can get along just one day, the 5 of us or 6 of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
George and Joe, I agree with Art. They should be here in Pahrump. And there's a beautiful place over there on Kellogg at the winery. Maybe if you drink a little bit of their wine, you might be able to make some decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Need to turn the mic on, please.
Okay. My name's Janet Arrett, and I'd just like to say that I support the board and their decision and their frugality in choosing to use the day that they're going to be down there anyway for the town meetings in Mesquite. I really appreciate you making that sacrifice and showing up early enough to go ahead and do that. I know that this is not an easy job and this is not a paid position, and you take a lot of abuse in some cases, and I am grateful for your service and your consideration of the taxpayers' money and your willingness to take your 4 hours from noon till however long it's going to be to do this service so that you can learn a little bit more about being a town board member so that you can serve us better so that we can have a better running town. So I am grateful that you're willing to make that sacrifice and do this for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no further public comment. We'll go to vote. It was to approve a town board retreat on the 4th of October prior to the Nevada League of Cities. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 11, discussion possible decision to approve selling town of Pahrump equipment through Nevada public auction. Mr. Colbert.
I was waiting for you to call on me. You mean with Ski in my office about 3 weeks ago, approximately 3 weeks ago, we talked about some equipment that the town had, specifically Explorer, that is being phased out due to the purchase of a new other vehicle. We sat down and talked, and he's like, we'll why don't you bring it to the auction? I'm having an auction here shortly. It's going to have a lot of vehicles. I think you can make a little extra money than instead of just putting it in the newspaper. And speaking with Matt Lewis, he agreed. I know Ski and Matt Lewis sat down and talked about it, came up with this agreement that's in the backup. I think it's a good idea. It keeps the money in-house. It helps a local business to possibly make a little bit of money. And as Ski said, he's always been able to obtain a little bit higher price for the vehicles than just putting them in the newspaper, and it's probably because he's really good at speaking. I brought him here tonight, so if he can answer any questions from the town board as to the process, he's sitting here. Thank you.
Ms. Parker.
Other than asking him how he learned to speak so fast, I'm not going to ask any questions.
There were 6 kids in our family, and we were very poor.
Mr. Gulkin.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it says 15% of vehicles, well, your company would get it. And it says, but with a minimum of $75. So I'm just wondering, what if something sells for $75 or $50? What if it sells for $50? Then what happens?
We call it even.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Endesby.
I just have a few procedural things, but I do appreciate the auction. I love going to them. It's one of those places that you always go thinking you're not going to buy anything, but you end up buying something.
Thank you.
Shopping is fun at your place. But I just wanted to make sure that you're on the approved vendor list. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And the maximum of $350, it could go over that, right?
I'm sorry?
You have here maximum of $350.
Right, that's the commission rate.
That's the commission.
Yeah, the chances of that happening are slim to none. We actually lowered that. Usually, when it comes to vehicles or a lot of other things like that, we don't put a cap on it. But we've done a lot of work with the county and other agencies, and that cap, you know, let's say, for example, that you bring down a vehicle and the auction price is $20,000. What that says is the maximum commission can only be $350. It can't be 15% of the $20,000. You know, I wouldn't be real concerned with it. I have the list of vehicles here, and you know, most of these vehicles are in op. And what this does, and I think, and Matt and I had a very long discussion about this too, and one of the things that'll provide opportunity is rather than let these assets accumulate, you know, the longer they accumulate, the more they deteriorate. So now the minute a vehicle becomes excess, then it can just roll down and we put it in the next available sale. That's what we do with a lot of the other agencies. You don't end up stockpiling. And that also includes just general merchandise that clutters up the yard.
Do we have a fleet management policy, Mr. Kobarger?
Yeah, when one gets old, we try to get rid of it and buy a new one. We have nothing really solid in writing, but we are, the department heads are actually working on that at this very moment.
Good.
Putting together something. Matt was in my office this morning talking about that before he went on vacation. Chief Lewis has already submitted his. Mr. Sullivan is working on one through the budget with the equipment in the offices and everything. So we are working on one, and hopefully we'll have it to the town board, hopefully in the next 30 to 45 days, ma'am. Through Mr. Darby. Sorry about that, Mr. Darby.
Not a problem.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we comply with the NRSs, and that's the reason I ask about the maximum of that 350, so that we don't go over the requirement that we go out to bid. So
thank you.
So thank you.
Dr. Waters.
Yes, I listened to Ski while he was auctioning off a motorbike at Smiles Across Pahrump, and I was very impressed with that. So I know he'll do a good job for us. And this also allows the local citizens an opportunity to buy these vehicles if they choose. So I think this is a win-win situation, so yes.
Thank you.
I guess basically all I'm lacking is a motion.
I can do that. I move that we approve selling Town of Pahrump equipment through Nevada public auction.
I second.
Oh, my mind's slipping, I forgot who you were. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board?
I just have one question for Mr. Kohlbarger, maybe the fire chief could answer. We've got that wrecked water truck in the yard. Why does that just sit there and we don't get rid of it?
I'll defer that to Chief Lewis if you don't mind, Mr. Darby.
Please.
I've had some people ask me about it, that's why I was asking.
I just need a clarification which one, because Matt has several. There have been several that have been transitioned over from the fire department, no part of our inventory any longer, but Buildings and Grounds use them for the arena. Are you talking about the damaged one in the back? That was part of an insurance claim, and I'd have to check with Matt to make sure everything's clear on that. It's not. It's part of an insurance claim, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure. I didn't know which vehicle you were talking about. I apologize. I could have answered that question, but thank you, Chief Lewis.
Thank you. Ms. Endersby?
Nope.
Dr. Waters?
Nothing.
We'll open this up to public comment.
George Gingell again. I think it's a good idea because if you put it in the paper, somebody's going to try and get it for nothing, where this fellow won't let it go for next to nothing, and I think he'll do a good job for the town.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. The motion is to approve selling Town of Pahrump equipment through Nevada public auction. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item number 13, future meetings, workshops, times, dates, and location. Ms. Parker? Anything? Mr. Colton? Ms. Endersby?
Nothing.
Dr. Waters?
Nothing.
Anything from staff?
Yeah, future workshop or retreat will be October 4th, noon to 8 in Mesquite, Nevada.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to item number 14, staff comments.
Two staff comments, sir. Mr. DeCanio talked about earlier tonight about local insurance agencies not ever having a right to bid down on for pool and pack, and us going to Reno to use the pool and pack. The pool and pack represents numerous agencies throughout the state of Nevada, and is just located in Reno as their main headquarters. And they have in the past sent out information to Pahrump businesses asking if they want to go through the process to be a pool and pack insurance agent, and to date, nobody has responded or gone through the training. That is why we use an outside agent. And that agent is located in Reno because that agent did take the time to go through pool and pack regs and rules, and you have to do that to be authorized to be a pool and pack agent. And also the fact that we paid $25,000 for something, but the town did not pay $25,000 for any agency to review the Bob Roode Center. That was a grant. It was through Brownsfield. It did not cost the town 1 red cent. Second, Mr. Murzio advised that there was an invoice from the pool and pack to pay for the damage to the Roode Center in the amount of $4,000 or $4,400. If there was, it was sent from Belfour Restoration, who did the work, directly to ASC, who is the arm of the pool impactor, handles that. Did not go to the town, and we did not pay for it. Those are the two staff comments that we wanted to correct for the record, sir.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 15, town board member comments. Ms. Parker.
Yes, I learned something tonight. Mr. Bond mentioned the fact that to damage property for someone over 70, it's a felony. So, I'm not 70 yet, but I'm getting close. So the next time my windshield gets broken, I guess it's a felony.
Thank you. Mr. Culkin.
I'm staying away from her car.
You better.
I'll park next to it.
I'd just like to talk about the Eagle Scout. If anybody, I wrote down his phone number and everything. If anybody has a project, and that could be to help a senior do something or whatever, build a little something, whatever, please get a hold of me. My son's an Eagle Scout, and I know how important that is to get that kind of project and everything, and they love to help out. So if anybody, I got his phone number, so get a hold of me, and I'll make it happen if you've got a good project.
I got one for you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Endesby?
Yes. In response to citizens that are concerned about the degree of our commitment here on this board, I'd like to say that I know every one of these board members are completely committed to this community. And we're so committed that we do things and attend meetings without compensation, and we do it on a regular basis. I attend many meetings for this town board and for my involvement in the community. One of them is the county commission meeting. This is the agenda and backup for a county commission meeting. And when I attend those meetings, I go through this and I pull out what is relevant to our community. I don't see many of our individuals that are concerned about our commitment attending those meetings, but I would really encourage everyone to be there. They recently, at the August 2nd meeting, they passed an MOU with the National Nuclear Security Administration for 5 years. I would think that might be of interest to some citizens. They passed an MOU with the BLM, with the Bureau of Land Management, Battle Mountain District, and Nye County for resource management plan and environmental EIS. What does that stand for? Environmental impact statement. And they also pursued litigation for damages caused to Blagg Road. So they will be starting that repair to Blagg Road now. Brian Coonsey, our district attorney for the county, took a voluntary reduction in salary. Commendable action on the part of any county government or government official. They did a resolution to have inspection of manufactured housing to be conducted by the Nye County Building and Safety, and fees modified for building permits inspection service through the contract with Charles Abbott and Associates. What that means is that if you have a manufactured house or are going to plan to have a manufactured house put on your property, Nye County Building and Safety will now be doing the inspection in any building permits. It used to be within the state. Another community service performed by Pahrump Valley Disposal was approved, where they waived landfill fees for a resident for the cleanup of a vacant building. So if you're concerned about some of the community's blight, there is work going on with the county, and I commend them for that. Nye County Desert Tortoise Habitat Advisory Committee has all their members seated now, and will start meeting for those that are interested, and you can contact Mrs. Parker, who sits on that. So if you would like to spend some time getting educated on what happens around us, you might want to attend a Nye County Commission meeting.
Thank you. Dr. Waters?
Yes, I'd just like to go back to the mutual aid agreement that we talked about. Captain Beck, and I'm glad he's still here, he made the statement about paragraph 2, number 2, PVFRS shall direct what services are necessary. In paragraph 3, NCES shall direct what services are necessary. What he left out was the fact that they shall direct what services are necessary for mutual aid. It has nothing to do with all the other things. It's for mutual aid only. And I just wanted to emphasize that that's what we were talking about. And there was also the mention of hazmat, hazardous material. And many people mentioned bombs. Yeah, bombs are hazardous material. But so is spilled fuel. A fuel spill is hazardous material. So when you look at that, and the fire department comes out and washes down a fuel spill, that's hazmat. So to make that stretch that every time you talk about hazmat, you're talking about bombs, is not true. So I just wanted to clarify that because I just listened to person after person coming up talking about bombs, talking about hazmat. We're talking about minor hazmat that a fire department would take care of. You're not talking about something that EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, would take care of. That would be a specialty that would be called out. So those are some of the things that I think we need to clarify when we talk about this mutual aid agreement. It's mutual aid. They're aiding each other. That's all it is. Thank you.
And with that, I would like to thank everybody for coming. Meeting adjourned.